Welcome. This is your little mini tutorial on core and how to repair rectus diastasis, which is separation of your rectus abdominis muscle from pregnancy. So even if you haven't been pregnant and you don't have rectus abdominis separation, you can still do these exercises if you're just you've been out of shape and you're looking for something to get you back into good core strength. Conventional wisdom out there about the core is that your deepest core muscle is your transverse abdominis, and that is behind the rectus abdominis, and it's a corset-like muscle that kind of wraps around the waist from the back to the front. And it is a very deep abdominal muscle, and it is an important part of your core strength. But even deeper than that is the psoas. So the psoas wraps from, well, it joins from the legs, little legs of the diaphragm, your breathing muscle, and becomes this sort of tenderloin of a muscle, really thick, really strong, spiraling muscle down the front sides of your lumbar spine. And then it joins the iliacus and inserts into the inner line of your femur bone, your thigh bone. And in myofascial anatomy, myo meaning muscle, fascia anatomy, this continues on. So the psoas is part of this whole network of connective tissue from the feet through the center of your shins, the inner thighs, into your pelvic floor, into the psoas, and up through the spine, wrapping around the diaphragm, heart, lungs, into the deeper neck, front side muscles of the scalenes, up into the tongue root, and even beyond the tongue root into the sides of your jaw and your temples. So this is one line of myofascia that actually affects, like dominoes, the connections in your deeper body, in your inner body, in your deeper core. So without going into it, the myofascia acts like guy wires, and it actually is a sort of a push-pull system. It passes tension along these guy wires, and when we activate one place in that guy wire, or we become weak or twisted or stuck in one of those places, it affects the whole rest of the chain. So when we want to activate the core, the deepest part of the core, the psoas, we actually look to the pelvic floor. And if we're working with the legs, we look to our relationship to the feet. But we won't go into all of that right now. I just wanted to say that. And then when you go back to this video and you do these exercises later, you can just skip this whole anatomy lesson and start later on down the line. Okay, so to begin, we're going to start on the back with the breath. So help yourself down into your back, and don't roll down, because that activates your rectus abdominis, and we want to avoid using the rectus abdominis until we've got those deeper core muscles starting to work for us, and they become the default instead of that rectus abdominis. So you roll down onto your side, and then you roll onto your back, nice and light and easy. Help yourself onto your back, and then begin with your feet on the floor, hip distance, toes pointing forward as best as possible, and heels underneath the knees as best as possible. Not so far tucked underneath the knees that you're pushing the knee forward of the heel, but just right underneath the knees, outer edges of feet in line with outer edges of pelvis. So with the hands, knitting your hands and spread them really wide. Place your hands on your belly area here. And then you could come just inside. So just, let me just say that again. Hi, Priya. So you can come with your pinky finger right to the very top ridge of your iliacus. So that's the crest of your pelvic bone. And so the very top front ridge of it, there's a little sort of nodule, there's a little lumpy bone there. And you don't have to be too precise about this. You're going to put your finger just inside of that, your pinky finger just inside of that, and then your thumb onto the bottom front ribs. And then the middle fingers kind of wrap in toward each other, and this is just like to encourage that diastasis to come back in, that separation to come back in. But that's not the primary focus here with our hands. Our hands are here to feel deeply into our torso, into our belly area. So as you inhale, you expand and relax completely into the belly. Let the breath flood down, let the rib cage widen through the sides, the back, the front. And let the belly expand, let the back expand. Feel that breath as though we're flooding all the way down into the bowl of the pelvis. And let the oxygen, the nutrients, dilate and open and warm and widen the pelvic floor. And then on your exhale, you squeeze with those Kegel muscles that you learned in pregnancy. Squeeze the Kegel muscles, the pelvic diaphragm. Take that funnel, which is resting like a cup inside of you, and squeeze it up. So as though you were taking the flames and burning them brighter on that inhale down into the pelvis, and then taking the heat and pressing it up like one of those, I don't know what they're called, fire starter blowers. You're taking that flame and you're pressing it up, and it's bouncing up the spine. So that's the visual I like to work with. You expand the flames, the fire on that inhale, burn away toxins, and then you send those toxins up and out. So in terms of core, we're inhaling and expanding, and then we're squeezing, engaging the pelvic floor, which activates through the myofascial anatomy your deepest lumbar support muscles. And so what you should feel just beneath your fingers there is a firming, a knitting in. Maybe even feel it in the front pelvic bones kind of hugging in towards center a little bit. If you don't feel it on the bone, that's okay. You should feel it just inside, this firming, just inside the front pelvic bones. And in this low belly area too, if you've got any fingers touching that part, you want to feel it firming towards center. And then that exhale, squeeze, lifts up, should help to hug that transverse abdominis in, hug and wrap those bottom front ribs into the body more, but not down and not compressive, down and in, but into the body. You should still have a little space in your lumbar curve, so we're not flattening, we're not even thinking about moving the pelvis and tilting it and tucking, as they say, or pushing out that lumbar curve, or keeping it neutral. All we're thinking about is that inner body. We're finding the breath to expand and open, and the exhale to squeeze inward and upward. Open as you breathe down, and lift inward and upward as you breathe up and out on your exhale. So that's the key to building your core strength, is your breath. That is your core strength right then and there. That's all you really need. That's your secret ingredient. So inhale, expand, relax, and exhale, squeeze and lift through the inner body. One more time, inhale, expand, feel the belly expand, your back expand, and exhale, feel this firming, hugging, dropping in. You should feel those bottom front ribs beneath your thumbs there sink into the body. You don't need to push the muscles down and into the floor to do that. Good. So hopefully I've reinforced that point enough. So that's the basic, that's the foundation. Then we're going to begin with some exercises, slowly, incrementally building towards a stronger core. So I'm going to get my mat out of the way. And first thing we're going to do is find that exhale, squeeze, pelvic floor contraction, lifting and lengthening. Shouldn't feel anything in the jaw. You should feel light and easy all the way up your neck spine. You still have your cervical curve. You still have your lumbar curve. And then we're going to slide one foot forwards with the hands here for now so that you can feel what's happening. So as you slide that one foot away from you, notice if you're kind of tipping to one side with your pelvis. See if you can keep that wrapping, hugging sensation, this neutralizing, the stabilizing of the pelvis and the low back as one leg slides long. And then draw it back in, and then slide the other one away from you. So So when you're doing this, you're activating the transversus and you're activating the psoas. And you're going to do that slowly and carefully. One foot comes back in, and then the other foot reaches away. Try and keep the toes reaching so that they're pointing up toward the ceiling and in alignment. So they're not swinging open, the leg isn't swinging open, it's staying along its track in the hip joint. Good. So we're just going to do that up to about 15 times, maybe less if you're just starting out. But the intention is to focus in on this part of the body. Keep your awareness with the breath and notice, literally notice, if there's a lot of movement, you do less. You don't take your foot so far away. Less is more when it comes to the core. You just reach it a little bit. And then you bring it back in. Then over time, it's going to start to feel easier. So you begin there. And then as that gets easier, this is the next step. You alternate. So you take one foot away, and then as it comes in, the other one slides. So socks are helpful. If you've got a yoga mat underneath you, just put socks on and hopefully it'll work. Otherwise, get rid of the mat and slide on socks. So as one comes in, the other works. And again, you're looking for how able are you to keep this knit hugging in as you move the legs. If there's a lot of wobbling and wiggling around, don't move them so far. Do less. Go back to that beginning stage of one foot comes in, the other reaches out. Up to 15 times. No more than that is necessary. And then you can give yourself a little gentle break. Take one knee to your chest and just kind of hug it in. Not so much that it picks the pelvis up, not so much it flattens that lumbar curve out, just resting on the back of the sacrum. And then if you can, both knees in, you can do a very gentle rock from side to side and massage it out. And then next, exercise the feet come down onto the floor. And take your hands back into that spot so you can stay dialed in, tuned in to this wrapping transverse abdominis, this deep core spinal support that sweeps up the lumbar spine. And then find your breath. And then on your exhale, as you're hugging and squeezing in, take one knee open. One knee open. Now this is going to be really tempting to tip and rock the pelvis in the direction of that knee. But the work is to send the back of the pelvis on the opposite side back toward the floor. Keep the knee pointing upward. So it's not so much about this opening leg, it's about this stabilizing side. And then bring it back to center and then open the other way. So very, very small movements are all you really need to awaken that core. And in fact, subtler is better to awaken the core. Again, it starts with the breath. You inhale and exhale. And then over time, you don't really need to worry and focus so much. It becomes an unconscious movement to hug and connect into those deeper support systems in your body. But while we're still working on it, we're taking one knee out, back in, and then the other one. And I'm doing that up to a maximum of 15 times. And then over time, that starts to feel easier. There's not a lot of swishing from side to side. That one's pretty challenging. So it might take a while. You can up it your game by taking one knee out, and then as it comes in, the other one opens. Now you've got to really concentrate that this pelvis isn't going anywhere. You should feel as well, if I neglected to mention, the back of your bottom ribs are on the floor. So that's how you ensure that you're not kind of hyperextending hyperlordosis with that low back. The back of the bottom ribs are on the floor. The front bottom ribs are hugged in. Yeah. So as one knee comes in, the other one opens. That's where you start to kind of up that game. You alternating maybe from side to side. Pretty tricky. Even for me, who's super core strong, that's still pretty tricky. Okay, so then rest it out. Give yourself a little gentle circle on the back of your pelvis, very light. Don't need to tuck in too much with your knees. And let it go. really tune into the breath. And then this is another one. And let me know if this doesn't work for you. And it feels good for me. But we're going to activate the core. So as you lean the heel of your hand into the just kind of this hollow at the front of your hip here, and point your fingers up towards your knees so they're tracking along your thighs. And then on your inhale, there's this little opening. You can even come into a little bit of rock of your pelvis here. And then on your exhale, you're going to squeeze, pull up through the pelvic floor, hug those front ribs in, lift, and imagine that length bouncing up the spine. You might even feel it bouncing up the spine. And then press your hands into your thighs. So that gives you a little pelvic traction. So the back of the pelvis, the sacrum, as it sets into the pelvic bone, it's called the sacroiliac joint. That's getting a little traction and release with that. You're also getting that pelvic floor squeeze activation, transverse abdominis. So you can do that again. So you inhale, and then on your exhale, you press, squeeze, pull up with your kegel. Draw the energy and hug the ribs in, and push in with your hands and release. Inhale, a little rock can feel good. A very gentle rocking, a little gentle tilting of the spine can feel good as a rest and release. But everybody's different, and a lot of funky things happen from pregnancy and childbirth, so you need to listen to your body and do what works for you. So I like to rest out by just kind of randomly circling the knees, taking my hands and manually manipulating my legs like they're little marionettes, and my hands are the puppet master. And then that just kind of releases in different places in the back of the pelvis. And then put your feet back down. And we're going to try something else, and then do let me know if this is too much for you. Don't roll up like that. That's for when you're all better. But in the meantime, you avoid rolling up, because that's the action that activates your rectus abdominis. And while that's still not kind of knitting back together, you really need to avoid doing that kind of work. Now, if you can, you're going to take your hands out and widen them up 45 degrees. Bring your feet up onto the floor to begin. Find that little tiny sneaky spot behind your lumbar. Make sure you're not flattening that low back curve. So about 2 fingers kind of space between your lumbar and the floor. You shouldn't be able to push your hand all the way through. That's too much. It should get stuck there. It's about 2 fingers space. Hug your belly and hug and wrap those ribs in. On your exhale, you're squeezing, engaging up through the pelvic floor. And then just start with one foot. Pick one leg up and see how that feels. Pick it up and lower it down. Notice if there's a lot of swishing and moving of the pelvis. If there still is, you go back to some of those earlier exercises. And then you pick the other one up and you lower it down. You pick the other one up and you lower it down. You're starting to work a little bit more of that psoas connection when you pick the legs up like this. Always, of course, in concert with the transverse abdominis, that wrapping. So you can alternate that, one foot up and then the other. So you can keep your shoulders relaxed, your jaw relaxed, your neck relaxed, and always tuning in to that inner body and that sensation of lift and squeeze on the exhale. Open on the inhale. Even as you're working like this, you can open on that inhale. You're not going to lose all form and shape. That psoas, the transversus still works as you inhale. So find that pelvic floor squeeze, lift one leg up. And then if you can, to challenge yourself, you're going to take both legs up. So this is after you've done that other one for a while. The next level up is to take both legs up. And then just kind of find this place where the thigh bones are dropped right over the hip joint. And then you can start to reach. So this is, after you've done the other one for a while, you can start to reach one leg away from you. Not too far away. Too far will really strain the low back. You need to have a lot of low belly strength to deal with that. but just a little tiny one, like you're sliding on a glass tabletop, you're reaching it away. If that becomes too much ever, you put the foot back down on the floor, you work with one leg at a time. You start here, yeah? And then over time, maybe you can alternate as one comes in, the other slides out. Always keeping this awareness at center of that hugging in and that hugging up. So inward and upward. We're not compressing and pushing out. We're decompressing through that core strength. Now I should say, so when the feet are down, you can take this waist and you can make it smaller, like you literally are wearing a corset. You can hug everything in, but as soon as you pick the feet up, you should feel a little poof underneath your fingers. Not a lot, not so much that you're swaying in the low back, that's different, but a little poof underneath your fingers is a sign that you've activated your deep spinal support muscles, your psoas. Yeah. So as that advances, as you get stronger in this, again, you only do up to like 15, sliding your leg away. You can start to tap. You can start to tap the foot so it reaches further away from you is harder, closer to you is easier. You start to tap the foot lower to the floor. And that really engages that lower abdominal area even more. And you can always, if you want to see if it's working, poke your fingers down in there. And then that little poke, that little feedback will actually trigger those muscles to fire and work better for you. So that's it. And now I don't know about this one, but I find this, so let me know if it doesn't work for you. I find this is a very helpful restorative. It really soothes my nervous system. So it's a really gentle twist with the feet out wide, the knees and the toes always moving together along the same line. Toe direction and kneecap direction face the same way as you rock your knees one way and the other. And then you can even rock your head the opposite way. Good. And then take your knees back in, give them a little circle one way and the other, whatever feels right for you, maybe one knee at a time. Good, and then place your feet down, stretch your legs out long, and then this is for once you feel that you've really developed. So after you've been doing these for a few weeks, you've really established a really strong core relationship, you can start to get more active in that transverse abdominis and more strength in the upper abdominals with this exercise. So you can take your hands and bring them around the back of your head. So your hands come around, cup the back of your skull, you can interlace, and then take your elbows in and reach your elbows up toward the ceiling. So not this way, but up toward the ceiling. You're making a little hammock for the back of your skull, and you're going to press the back of your skull into your hands. Fully rested, actually, in your hands, so you're not straining your neck muscles. And then as you exhale, you're finding that pelvic floor squeeze, wrapping up the transversus abdominis in, and you're lifting. It's this very, very small lift. You don't have to come all the way back down. You can. If you need to rest, you inhale, head down, elbows can widen, open. You can take the inhale to open, but you don't want to get too archy with that spine, which can overstretch and over lengthen the rectus abdominis. Keep that inhale widening more out to the sides of your rib cage. And then on your exhale, you pick up, and then if you can, if you're built enough strength, you take this little pulse, up with your face, up with your elbows toward the ceiling. So you're not scrunching chin to chest, not straining those neck muscles. And then dropping the weight into your hands will actually activate the upper abdominals, the upper region of that rectus to work more, but always keep yourself dialed in to that transverse abdominis strength. So that's somewhere to go to over time. And again, you don't need to do much more than 15. Okay, I'm going to leave it at that for now. Give yourself some time to rest. Wiggle it out, stretch it out, shake it out even. And then come back to a really simple resting place. This can feel nice if your pelvis is not enjoying being on the back. You can rest on your side. But if you can, wherever you are, give yourself some space and some time to just close your eyes and feel deeply into your body. So with eyes closed, find your resting place. Take a deep, easy breath through your nose and let it flood all the way down through your whole torso, all the way down to your belly, into your back, into your pelvis. And exhale out tension, fatigue. Let effort go and find that softness and that sweetness of the breath to help restore and repair you, and to help cultivate the patience that you need, really, to come back into your body, to come back into your strength and into that core. It takes time. You gotta move slowly and patiently, and little baby steps. Okay. And then when you're done resting, in whatever position, if you're on your back, you just roll really easy to your side, so you're not doing that big old roll up, which can stress the rectus diastasis even more. And then come back up. Go run and grab your screaming child. Okay, namaste.